Hey everybody, it is Friday, January 17th, and this is episode number 6 of Super GameTalk Turbo HD Remix. I'm your host, Capanius, and I am joined by Vertigo Tea Party.
Hello.
We are back once again to discuss the games we've been playing and the latest in the news. So let's start us off, Johnny. What have you been playing?
Well, I started replaying Fable on PC. I started playing it a long time ago when it was on PC, and I never finished it for whatever reason. Got pretty far, so I decided I'm going to do a Let's Play on it, so I'm playing through it again. I also started playing Rage by id Software.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Fable. They're re-releasing it soon, right?
Yes, they are.
So why not wait for the re-release?
I don't think they're doing PC, are they?
No, I think it's Xbox.
Yeah,
or
so
it's 360, right?
Oh, that's right. I think they also doing it 360 for whatever bizarre reason.
Probably because they started so long ago.
Maybe, and it is the Lionhead crew, I assume. So
it's not a very big team.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, not for just a HD redo.
Yeah,
but I actually enjoyed the game when I played it. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was good. I mean, good enough for me to play through it again and actually finish it this time.
I've still never played through that game.
Have you played?
I've had a couple false starts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've given it a couple shots now, and I just couldn't get into it.
There's some things that I really like. The experience system, I think, is really well done, and I'm surprised you don't see more people copy it. Mm-hmm. Where, like, if I use a bow and I kill a creature, I'll get some general XP, and I'll also get archer, like, bow XP. So that when I go level, let's say I kill a goblin with a bow only. And let's say I get 500 general experience and then 500 archery experience. When I go to level up, my skills are also split up like swordsman, mage, archery, whatever. And I can use those archery points or the general points for archery. So let's say there's a skill I want under archery that's 1,000 points. I could say, well, I'll spend my 500 archery and my 500 general and buy this. Or I'll just wait until later. Because sometimes there's skills, cross skills that you want. Like there's strength skills that you get that are melee based, but if you're not doing a lot of melee, you still want them though, like hit points and toughness and things like that. You can use your general XP for that. And it's just a really good system. I like that it gives you experience based on what you're using, but it also gives you general experience to say, if there's these other skills you want to pick up, go ahead and get them, because sometimes later on when the few RPGs that do this, if you decide later, you know what, I'd like to start switching to one-handed or magic, your skills are just terrible because you've not had any experience in it, which, like Skyrim had that issue. Like if you wanted to, halfway down the road pick up two-handed axe and your skill is at 10, you're going to get destroyed all the time because you've had no points in it, and the monsters, or at least some of this stuff is scaled to your level. Yeah. So
I think that's really when you get in those traps, is when there is enemies that are scaled according to your level. Mm-hmm. I think that was a big problem with Oblivion, in that you never really felt completely powerless or completely powerful.
Right.
Because you could go to, early on in the game, you could go to like this really, what was perceived as a dangerous area. And there would be a really like heinous looking enemy, but it was scaled to you. So if you're level 1, it's not that bad, I think some people fix that with mods, like they did level banding and stuff. Yeah. And so that's what's cool about those Bethesda games, is how moddable they are. But
yeah, I think they went way too. It was a good idea in Oblivion. Mm-hmm. They just went way too far with it. They should have had a lot more restrictions. Like bears can't level to level 50. They are, levels, 15 to 25. But then once you're like, if you're level 1 and run to a bear, it's still level 15. So you need to avoid bears for a long time. So I think I'm almost positive the scaling is still there in Skyrim. It just seems much, much less severe. And there's still monsters that will right off the bat just destroy you, like those giants and the mammoths and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's the way it should be. You should be afraid of some creatures. Yeah, but at the same time, once you get to a certain point, you shouldn't still be afraid of bears. I mean, obviously, you should be permanently terrified of mud crabs, because those are the most horrible things
course,
in the
yeah.
game. My God, they're cruel, and you can see the sick twistedness in their eyes when they're staring at you.
Gosh, it's terrifying. Another game that does scaling in a weird way was. Did you ever play Lunar?
No, I heard of it, but I never played it.
Yeah, so it was originally released on Sega CD, but they re-released it on PlayStation. That's when I played it, and it was a traditional party-based, turn-based JRPG. Where you if you hit a boss, generally you would go back and grind, and you'd get higher level, and then you'd be able to beat the boss. Well, the problem is the enemies, the bosses, were scaled according to the main character. The main character's level.
Right.
So it's, the level is 12 or whatever. They were just a multiplier off, like their hit points were, a set number multiplied times his level.
Yeah.
So as you leveled up, the bosses just kept getting stronger and stronger.
Right.
And so it kind of was the opposite of the way those grindy RPGs usually work, in that you're improving your situation when you're leveling. But I always thought that was a weird example of scaling enemies, was Lunar.
Yeah, it seems like you could get into a big trap there. Like if you weren't leveling, I mean, I have no idea how the stat system worked and the item system, but it seemed like you could actually screw yourself that you get to such and such level and either have the stats in the wrong spot or your weapons are still too weak, and now you're just completely outclassed by a boss, and it's short of unbeatable.
Well, luckily there wasn't ever any enemies that were super hard in that game.
Okay.
So if it was a really difficult RPG, then it would have been kind of flirting with the impossible there. I know that there's in some of the older, like Final Fantasy 3 for the Super Nintendo, which I guess is really
6.
Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
You could get in some situations early on which made the game, you're stuck, and it's really, really, really difficult to beat a boss. Like, because there's some areas where you would save and then you'd immediately fight the boss and you had no opportunity to grind or improve.
Yeah.
So if you can't beat the boss in that level, then you're kind of screwed. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and just the other thing about Fable is I like the aesthetic. I like the way the models look, the houses look. It just has a very distinct Fable look to it. Mm-hmm. And while there's more serious aspects of the story, there's a lot of cheesiness and dialogue, and the game where you kick the chicken into the scored sections. There's a lot of it doesn't take itself overly seriously. I don't know about the other two. I've heard 3 was awful.
They keep that kind of same sense of humor. A lot of fart jokes.
Well, I mean, the game overall, I think I heard 3 was really bad.
Yeah. I heard 3 was bad too. But in terms of tone, they all stay pretty consistent.
Right. So I've been enjoying that. Been making an evil archer. And another big thing that's awesome about that game, you can decapitate people with arrows. That alone makes me want to play an archer. Like the first time I shot somebody in the head and their head spins around like a top and then it falls over, I was like, oh my God, this is best
This
RPG.
game is awesome. Should have been on the box.
Yeah, it should have been like an animated little thing on the box. I've also been playing Rage by id Software. Man, that game has serious texture pop-ins. Still,
it was a weird engine. It's the only game that's been on that engine, right?
Because people at first were like, oh, well, Rage is just going to be like Doom 3 was, where they're just trying to sell their engine, and they're like, no, we're not going to sell this engine. It's like, what?
Well, supposedly the way it does texture mappings is supposedly unlike any other game engine. So I just feel like it got to a point where they just felt like it wasn't worth fixing. I don't know. Have they scrapped that? Will that be the one and only game that's on that engine?
I honestly, I have no idea. Honestly, I haven't kept up with id Software much because after I forget what did they do before Doom 3? Do you remember? Because I remember I wasn't a
Castle
huge
Wolfenstein.
I don't think I played that. Honestly, I was never a big id fan. Even during the Doom days, because I thought it was just. I mean, the gunplay obviously felt really good, but it was kind of bland. The character had no. For Doom and Quake, the character had no personality. The weapons were really bland. It's this weapon does more damage to this weapon. This weapon does more damage to this
even
weapon.
Are you? You weren't I understand nobody's a fan of ID now, or id now. But back in the day, man.
I
Doom
didn't
and Quake.
dislike them, but I thought like playing Duke Nukem multiplayer was so much better because you had all these different guns that were totally different. Like you had the ice gun, which I think that one could bounce around corners and you could freeze our enemies. You had the shrink gun, you had the pipe bombs, you had the hollow nukes or the hollow dukes. Like there was so much interesting things with the weapons. And Quake, it was like, oh well, just get the lightning gun. That's what.
What about the time in between when Doom was out and Duke Nukem 3D had not yet come out?
I probably got my PC after Duke came out because I think it was one of the first games that I got.
I just remember hooking up no modem serial cables from one computer to the next and putting in like IPX address, whatever. I don't even remember the terms of that, but just one computer hooked up to from a serial port to the other serial port.
Was it IPX, SPX? Or something different?
Something like that.
But
anyway.
yeah, I mean, my playtime was in a cyber cafe, and I liked Quake. I mean, I enjoyed playing Quake, especially when it was new. It was like, oh my god, like this is incredible. But I kept wanting to go back to something more dooky, with varied weapons. I just didn't. I mean, you had the grenade launcher, which was a little different, but like Duke had such a good variety of weapons.
The weapons were really fun, and the shrink ray.
The shrink ray and bouncing like the ice ray off of mirrors and stuff. Remember back when games you could actually see yourself in mirrors?
Man,
what
that
happened?
Was, to me, I was like, all right, this is the next big
and we've
step.
stopped. We don't do that anymore. You no longer look at yourself in mirrors. Whatever, like that's become some kind of ancient lost technology that we've not been able to discover yet again.
I think the last FPS where I remember there being a mirror scene was Prey.
That's exactly the game I was thinking of. And even then, I think that was like just to be. Well, I think you could see yourself like when you moved around a bit. I think it was pretty fun.
It was always you saw how bad the animations of your own character were, because there was no need to like really polish up the animations on the protagonist because you're just a camera.
Yeah.
So,
but the other thing that always got me about Duke was they had portals. Like this was, and like before, and you could like shoot through them and see people on the other side of them and shoot them through the portals. Like that didn't get done again until Portal.
We were so close, and we didn't even know it.
Yeah.
What kind of game could be? I mean, theoretically, what kind of game could have been made at that time? But
I know.
It's crazy.
And then George Broussard went and crapped all over the Duke Nukem title. I blame him entirely. He belongs in my little island of misfit developers. But him and Peter Molyneux and Brad McQuaid, a bunch of other people.
Yeah. There's a long list of people you're unsatisfied with.
Yes, to say the least. But yeah, Rage has been fun so far. I've used some fixes to get around this texture pop in, but it's kind of sad that one, they haven't bothered to fix it. They're just like, meh, oh well, too bad, throw it out there, who cares?
Sales weren't good enough to fix it.
Yeah, oh well, too bad, they're just not going to fix it. My understanding is, and I didn't look into this, it's just something somebody had mentioned, so grain of salt, but so apparently ZeniMax, who owns Bethesda, like apparently Carmack went to them and said, hey, give us a chance to fix this, it looks terrible, and they were like, which I can totally believe that, since ZeniMax are kind of douchebags.
Carmack, who's no longer with id.
Yeah. And, this is a whole nother topic, but I think people think of him, too, as a game designer. I never understood that. Like, he's an amazing coder.
Yes, he's a programmer. Yeah.
That's where it stops. And I don't think he really wanted a lot to do in design. Not after maybe like Doom. I think he wanted to just do the coding stuff.
I think it's really, those are two completely departed disciplines. And I don't know of anybody that's amazing at both. I mean, I think there's usually like a clear distinction on if somebody's an excellent designer or an excellent programmer.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody who is considered good at both. I don't know.
I think a lot of it's just teams now. I think you probably have... And even if they are really good, you don't ever hear about them because they're working for somebody else. I think maybe this will change now that we're kind of going back to Kickstarters and smaller teams where you have an amazing programmer who can shine as opposed to amazing programmer who's just one of 15 programmers at Santa Monica Studios, right?
Well, I think the ideas of the tasks of a programmer can be split up more specialized than a designer can.
Right,
a designer needs to have a full view of the game and the overview of all the different moving parts of the design of the game.
Yeah, Ken Levine.
Yeah, a programmer can just be like, oh, I make this one script convert this data to this other script. That's all I do. And that you can do that specialization. But yeah, that's why you see those. That's why those names pop out, but you never hear about a really good programmer.
Right. Yeah. Not anymore because there's so much to do. Because if John Carmack, let's say John Carmack was born 10 years later, but still absolutely ridiculous, brilliant programmer, would we have ever heard of him? Pretty good chance we would not have. Especially because he said repeatedly, because you did read the Masters of Doom book, right?
No.
You should read that, by the way. It's anybody listening, it's Masters of Doom. It talks about the birth of id with John Carmack and John Romero, and building the various games. Is a really, really good read. But even he said himself multiple times, he just wants to be stuck in a room, in a closet, a corner somewhere. Just let me code. I don't want to deal with any of this other crap. So I think if he would have come up now, like I say, if he's born 10 years later, we wouldn't know who John Carmack is. He's probably just an employee, maybe working for a smaller company. And maybe within smaller circles, like indie development circles, he would probably be known.
Yeah.
But to the gamers at large, would probably not know who he was.
I think also just the way games are made now, there's way more kind of levels of abstraction. There's middleware and there's engine developers, and then there's people that are in charge of the content and making art assets, transforming them into something the engine takes in. And back in the day, a programmer way back in the day, if you're talking about an Intellivision game or an Atari game, it was I'm the dude that made this game. Intellivision was big about publicizing this is the maker of our game. Whereas Atari was you're employee number 50 and we're not going to call it out. But they had these big full page ads about I'm John so-and-so, and I made this Intellivision game.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how...
John Madden made the football game.
Exactly. It's interesting how back then it was the programmers did design work.
Yeah.
But as games get more and more complicated, not only are there a separation between programming and designing, but there's the programmer of this... the programmer of the game, the programmer of the game engine, the programmer of the middleware. So it gets more and more complex.
Yeah. But I guess to finish up on Rage specifically, it's been a fun game so far. And now that I get the texture pop-in fixed, it's absolutely gorgeous looking game. It looks incredible. And the AI of the enemies is pretty interesting. They don't just necessarily run straight at you. If you're in a small tunnel, they'll sometimes run at you, but then kind of jump off the wall, kind of run up the wall and maybe kind of push off the ceiling or something. So it's they could throw you for a loop because they're just going to run straight at me, maybe dodge a little bit, but no, they'll kind of crouch up and jump on the wall. It's pretty cool to see them in action. The animations are really good, and of course John Goodman. Can't go wrong there. But it's been fun so far. I'm not crazy about the racing aspects. Driving is fun, but I don't really crazy about the arcadey type racing. But overall, it's been fun. As far as indies, I played a bunch, but two in particular. One was 3089. I just did a Let's Try of that. It's a futuristic action RPG. You make a character. It's a robot that you create, and it's an automatically generated world.
That's your favorite thing, right? Procedurally generated worlds.
To some extent.
No, usually that's one of the things you hate most about roguelikes, right?
No, that part I don't mind. Okay. It's having to start all over again, right at ground zero. Yeah. That is what I hate about roguelikes. And that's why I like Rogue Legacy more than other roguelikes.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I guess that's not... The castles were different, but one, you could pay to keep them the same, and two, your character sort of lived on by your armor and your weapons and things like that. But the procedural general I don't mind... But it's, in a nutshell, there's some interesting customization. You tend to not find just a weapon or a helmet. you'll find a part of it. So let's say pants. There's two parts of pants, a left leg and a right leg. And the left leg might have, X, Y, and Z stat. And then the right leg has A, B, and C stat. And if you put them together, it'll have all those stats. So if you're building your character to be, like, say, focus on melee and stealth, you'll want to find those stats on pants and go, oh, this just dropped. And then you go to a workshop and put the pants together and then wear them. And you can do that with guns, swords, daggers, all kinds of different weapons. The thing that gets a little bit monotonous is all the quests are generated, and it's all pulling from the same small bucket. So it just doesn't make sense. Like a standard quest would be, go kill this enemy, pick up this item, and then kill these other 3 enemies randomly, and then go turn this item in. Mm-hmm. Or there's other weird things that'll happen. It'll say, like, the first part will be protect this person for a minute, and you go to this person and they're inside of your city, so they're not under attack at any point. So you just stand there for a minute, and then the next portion of the quest.
Is this an early access game, or is this out?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it's early access. Now, he has said that it's a work in progress, and apparently this is actually, I don't know if it's a sequel or it's next in the series. I think it was. I already forgot the name of the game because it's like 3089, I think. I'll have a link in the video description if it's on YouTube. But anyway, it's an interesting game. But like I said, I think it get a little monotonous. The gunplay feels weak to me because the robots. This is my big issue: is the enemy robots are pretty much spot on 100% of the time, and their shots move very quickly. And you don't move all that quickly, and you don't have any dodges, so it's really hard to avoid their fire. Yeah. And a lot of times you're stuck in the middle of an open field with nothing to hide behind, so they're just laying into you. Mm-hmm. And your guns, on the other hand, also have a travel time, so you don't have anything that just shoots bullets like immediately. So you always have to lead them at the same time you're getting blown up. And honestly, swords are, oddly enough, the best item in the game because you can do like a charge attack, even the stuff in the air. You like charge up at it and hit it. And I found that much better than the gunplay. But it is an interesting game.
Yeah, I watched a bit of the Giant Bomb Quick Look for it.
Oh, yeah?
I was really... I don't know. It didn't appeal to me. It didn't seem like the kind of game I'd get into.
There's definitely people out there who love it. Because I was reading their reviews. Because when I first played it, I hated it. Like, I could not find anything I liked. And whenever that happens with a lit try of an indie game, I think, okay, well, maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe I'm missing something, so I might peek at like user reviews and whatnot. And a lot of people were saying, oh, I love this game. I've put 50 hours into it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
So I kind of jumped back into it, and I was like, okay, some of this stuff is starting to make a little more sense, as far as the stats and building your items go. And when I realized that you really, really need to build your defense up and focus on specific, weapon types, it get better, but it's not something that I could see myself spending a lot of time. But there's obviously a market for it because there's a lot of people who really do enjoy that kind of thing. So you can check it out if you're interested. I forget what the price is. I don't think it's very much. But, yeah, check that out. There's also a game called... Oh, I had to check my list. Hold on. I already forgot the name of it. I'm not good with names. It's just Velocity. I thought it was like something Velocity because I don't think it's just Velocity, but it is. It's a shoot 'em up, and I'm not big into shoot 'em ups myself, but it was still enjoyable. The kind of, I don't want to say gimmick because gimmick has kind of a negative connotation, but the element that's different about this one is it's teleportation based. Mm-hmm. So you have a short range teleporter. So if you're using the controller, which I strongly suggest, you can kind of move your cursor to another location and teleport to that location. And you need to do that because it is an auto scroller. And you'll need to, like, sometimes your entire way will be blocked off, but then there's an opening up to the top left, and you need to teleport across.
So you basically, you control your ship with one stick and the cursor with another stick?
Right. And then you hold a button down to say I want to teleport.
Yeah.
And then I think you just move the right stick will move the cursor or the marker, and that tells it where you go, and then the other one moves it, and you can shoot regular bullets. You have bombs, things like that. Mm-hmm. I can see some interesting speed runs with that game because you can go faster, and it makes your score better. But if you get ram into an enemy, or if you get stuck behind something and go off screen, you do die. So, and especially with the teleportation mechanic, I could see some interesting speed run potential there. You also have a long range teleport where you can drop these like probe like things, where some levels, because it's an auto scroller, let's say that there's a special gate in the middle you need to open, and you need to hit 2 red batteries to do it. Well, there's a split in the level, and you have to choose one way or the other. So you drop your teleporter at the beginning of the split, and you go left, and you destroy one of the generators, go back to the original, that little pod. Now you go to the right arm and destroy the other generator, teleport back to the split again, and now that gate is closed, and you can go through that gate. So there's some interesting mechanics like that, and like I said, I could see some interesting speedruns that could be done with that. The music's really good in it. Graphically, I think it looks good. So if you're into shoot 'em ups,
is that on Steam or?
Yes, I'm pretty sure Velocity is on Steam.
Okay,
and I think it's. I need to check the prices on these before I do this. So I think they're like $9 or $15. I think it's $9. So a good price, and there's like 50 levels or something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of levels. If you like a shoot 'em up, check out Velocity.
Cool.
So what have you been playing?
Well, let's see. First of all, I decided I needed a good controller for my computer.
Right.
I've been using the 360, but there are some games that I wanted to use it to. I wanted a D-pad for.
Right.
And I had read that you can use your PS4 controller on a computer with the right drivers.
By the way, sorry about missing your tweet about that. I saw that like 2 weeks later. No, it was a Google message or something. You posted something.
I don't even remember that. Did I?
No, I don't know, because I noticed, Travis made a comment about the controller. Oh, that was 2 weeks ago. Oops. Way to pay attention.
Oh, you mean the Xbox controller?
It might have been.
Yeah.
I thought it was a PS4 controller, but it might have been.
Yeah. Oh, well, anyway, I got a Bluetooth USB adapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like a tiny little dongle that you put in, and then it just connects up. I had a little issue with it at first. It took some kind of tweaking, but it's working flawless now. It's perfect. And so there's no like latency or anything. And so I decided I would try to play a game that I wanted to have to use the D-pad on, so I played Spelunky for quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
and I gotta say that's a fun game. Like it is kind of a drag when you start over, but it's the controls are really fun. I don't know.
Right. I think people who like roguelikes, I mean, that's a mechanic that they like, so it's not a problem that you start over when you die for people who like roguelikes. Yeah,
I mean, it just feels. More like a new life than, like I get to play again, like just kind of experience that world again. I think the procedurally generated maze is just always makes for interesting changes.
I think it's cool they do a daily challenge too. I think that's really a smart idea.
I think that's smart.
It's one of those games I enjoy watching other people play, but I don't like playing it.
Yeah, it's funny. Pat and I mentioned John Bomb a lot, but Patrick Klepek has been really into Spelunky lately. He's been doing the daily challenges on Twitch, and so I'll tune in and watch him. And it's interesting because sometimes he'll do really well, and like one day he did it, and it was just like it lasted like 5 minutes, and it's like, well, that didn't turn out very well.
There was somebody did something, I guess, that was really amazing, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, called Bananosaurus Rex, I think it was.
I didn't hear about that.
He did something like he beat the game with an eggplant or something. I could be spurting random things. I don't know.
I played it for a bit. It's funny because I was. You just keep discovering new things in that game.
Yeah.
And I deliberately not went to any wikis or read anything about it because I just want to discover the stuff on my own.
Your guy dies in the end.
Oh no! Spoiler. But I was in the shop where there's a shopkeeper where you can buy upgrades and stuff, and I assumed that the NPC was just invulnerable or whatever. And behind him, I wanted to get something behind the shop, so I'll just bomb this or whatever. the shopkeeper goes nuts. He's like, terrorist! And he starts throwing bombs at me, like, oh my gosh. I'm like laughing and running away at the same time. I died very quickly, but yeah, it was fun just experiencing stuff like that. And then I finished Assassin's Creed 4, which it's funny because like last time I talked about it, I said I was on sequence 12 of 13. Well, there's pretty much like 5 minutes left to do on sequence 12.
Oh.
And sequence 13 is like an interactive credits. Like, so I was pretty much like done with the game.
Oh, okay. So you 100% of the game.
No,
totally.
No.
So you
not even close. It's funny because I told myself I was having such a good time while I was playing the game. It's like, man, after I beat this, I'm going to go 100% it. And then like I beat the game and I looked through the menu. I was like, man, there's just too many other games to play. Like, I just look at my backlog and I look at what needs to be done to 100% Assassin's Creed, and it's like, life's too short. I'm sorry.
yeah, that is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you want to call it that these days, is that there are these games that come out like Arkham City and Arkham Asylum. Well, Arkham City in particular, where you got these tons of trophies and things to do. Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider, and it's like, man, I want to go do those things, but there's like a billion other new games that I can play.
Especially this time of year. Like,
yeah.
I just feel like right after Christmas, your backlog is the craziest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm trying this year. I really want to make serious efforts to clean it up. I definitely won't get through it.
Did you see what I did? I decided to create some accountability. I would publicly post my backlog.
Yeah.
So anybody can look at it. Like, but I also am going to like cross things off as I beat it. So I'll have a list of what I did in 2014.
Yeah.
So I can go back and be like, these are all the games I played in 2014. But if you go to Capanius, capane.us/backlog, that's where my backlog is. So
yeah, they have a site like called Backloggery as well.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's kind of a pain though.
Yeah, it didn't seem like the interface and stuff was that fun to use. I don't know. So I'm just typing them out on Tumblr. But you can go there and hound me, harass me, like, why aren't you playing these games on your backlog? I've also been playing a ton of Pokemon Y, which is still a blast. It's kind of weird pacing in this one. Like, the point of every Pokemon game is basically you get your Pokemon, you catch the Pokemon, and you've got to get the 8 gym badges. Like, you've got to defeat these 8 like leaders, and they each have specialties, and it's paced in such a way that you do dungeons and stuff in between each gym. And in the past, it's been linearly paced, so that like you do a gym, you do some stuff, there's this huge gap between Gym 1 and Gym 2 in Pokemon. And I don't really know why, but then there are like 3 or 4 gyms that are like right next to each other in terms of pacing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd. But yeah, moving along, it's really fun. I mean, like, I would say it's one of the best Pokemon games, and it's a great starting point for new players. Last time I was talking about it, and I said something like, I don't think, Pokemon has to be one of those games you grow up with. And a friend of mine was listening to the podcast, and he's like, I'll give Pokemon a shot. And so he jumped in, and he's enjoying it. And so I think Pokemon X and Y are good starting points if you want to try it. They're really fun RPGs, but
they're DS only, right?
3DS only. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So isn't there like kind of a point of contention that they've never had a Pokemon on an actual like home console?
Well, they have had Pokemon games, but
not Pokemon.
Yeah. I don't really know if people get upset about that. There's something inherently like that links well with being a handheld game. Like, it's just, you can play, you open it up, you play a few seconds, and you can close it. It really matches the handheld platform really well. In the past, they have made like Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Battle Arena games where you import the Pokemon you catch in the handheld versions and you play them on the console. Oh, yeah. And so it's kind of cool because you basically, you train these things up, and it's cool to see them, in rendered, in 3D, especially back when it was a Game Boy game. You could import the Game Boy cart onto your Nintendo 64 and play them that way. And it was it was huge. The difference in graphics between the
Yeah.
original Game Boy and Nintendo 64.
Oh yeah.
It's not a big of a deal anymore because the 3DS Pokemon models are pretty good.
Yeah.
But that's been pretty fun. I mean, I'm probably a good 20 hours into that. I've got 6 badges, so I'm making progress.
So do you find with the 3DS, do you find that you use the 3D pretty much all the time?
No, I find that I use it a lot for games that it's good at, and games that aren't that good at it, I sometimes turn it off. So for Pokemon, what's interesting about it is that only the battle scenes are in 3D.
Yeah.
And everywhere else is 2D. And I found that the 3D isn't that great. It's not necessarily bad. So I just leave it off the whole time.
Okay.
Zelda had particularly good 3D. Like the Link Between Worlds, I felt like the 3D was the best in it. I kept that like on almost all the time.
So would you say that your feelings about 3D have changed at all because of this? Like before, cause I got the impression you were more in the 3D is totally a gimmick, I don't care.
Yeah, I think at first I was totally like, whatever, I don't need 3D.
Yeah.
It's cool to experience it. When it's done well. I think it really does add to the sense of depth. Like for Zelda especially, there was a particular dungeon where you remember the floating hands from the original Zelda?
Yeah,
that would come out and grab
yes.
you and pull you
to the beginning of the dungeon.
Those are in Link Between Worlds. And what's cool is when you have the 3D effect on and at a pretty high level, they add the depth to it, so it really looks like he's hovering over you.
Oh yeah,
and it looks really neat. And what's cool about it is that the dungeon, you have to use the hand as part of the puzzle in the dungeon. So there's switches on a floor above you that you can't hit.
Yeah.
But you have to position yourself underneath this hand, so when the hand tries to reach you, it hits the switch.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty cool effect, and I think Nintendo does a good job in that game of using the 3D effect. It's funny about like the Nintendo, I don't know if you want to call them gimmicks, but like since the DS, they added 2 screens and they added a touch screen. And they add these unconventional gaming interfaces. Usually it's only Nintendo titles that utilize it really well.
Right.
Like third parties have never really been able to like get a hold of the vision of it, and that's really hurt them, I think, sometimes, because usually if you want to cite a really good example of the dual screen use or a touch screen use, it's all like first party games. So yeah, that's the way the 3D is really good in Zelda, but for Pokemon it's not bad, but it doesn't really add anything to the battles.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I've played that, and I also played Nidhogg. That came out on Monday, and I got a review up for it on my blog. It's very similar to Samurai Gun in that it's pretty much made for local like competition play. So playing against somebody who's in the room with you.
Yeah.
It's a fighting game, and it's kind of a back and forth, like it's
fencing, right?
It's like fencing. So you have these 2 characters that are fencing, and they're what's the aesthetic of it is really interesting because each character is just a solid color.
Yeah.
And when somebody dies, they bleed that color like everywhere. So it's just like splatters of, but they're not like red or anything. It's like splatters of green blood or splatters of purple blood everywhere. And when you defeat your opponent, you get the arrow, which means you can go to the next screen. And he respawns in the next screen, and he has to win in order to go the other way.
Okay.
And so you're basically, it's kind of a territorial fight where you need to finish enough consecutive battles to get to the final screen, and then you win the match, so to speak. So it's kind of, what's cool about it is that if there's enough back and forth, I mean, a match could take hours.
Yeah.
If there's no streaks long enough for one person to get to the final screen. And what I think is interesting is kind of like, that's one thing I like about baseball. Like, there's no set amount of time. So if something magical happens, you can come back from any deficit.
Right.
And so there's always this element of like, well, let's just score enough runs this
The
inning,
Braves could always blow it in the
Yes.
bottom of the ninth.
Yes, it always comes back to any team can come back and beat the Braves. But if you're 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter of a basketball game and you have a certain number of points you're down
Right.
by, the whole like exercise is pointless. Like, why are we on this court? Like, it's been
I
decided.
agree.
So I know it's kind of a stretch, but I like that association that you can go back and forth and you're always in it. You're always in the game. And the other notable thing about Nidhogg is it's got a really good soundtrack. So it's by I don't know how to pronounce it, Daedalus or Daedalus.
Daedalus.
Anyway, what's cool about it is when you install it, if you look in your directory where the game exists, it's the whole soundtrack is there in MP3 format with the album art and everything. So you can just put it on your iPod or whatever.
I love when they do that.
Yes, I
Super
did
Meat Boy did that too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. So that's really good. I gave that a 9 on my blog.
Oh, really?
But yeah, the only thing is the online isn't there yet,
but it's coming.
They're still working on it. I mean, 2 people made this game, and it really is made for local, like, competitive. It's a blast to play. Like, it is really fun, and it has a built-in tournament mode where you can have up to 8 people, and it'll handle all the buys and brackets for you automatically. And I can see having a bunch of people over and having some drinks. It is definitely like hours of fun. Like, it is just the controls and the combat system are really, really well refined. So you could play that game quite a bit. Hopefully it'll be at EVO this year. So,
so would you say it's as deep as, say, Dive Kick?
I would say it's everything Dive Kick should have been.
You mean good?
Yeah, well, like, yeah.
To be fair, I haven't played Dive Kick.
Dive
Kick
Kick's
is just
fun,
kind of
but it's like
I like to kick sometimes.
Yes, Dive Kick basically had that feeling of like, this is a great, like, dumb thing to play with people that are in the same room as you. But Dive Kick gets old and Nidhogg doesn't. And I think it just has to do with the ups and downs of the territorial part of it. Like, if Nidhogg was just a go and whoever dies,
right,
or like best of 7
system.
or some point system, it's really that tension that builds between gaining and losing ground that I think is brilliant. Like, I think it's really good. And between Samurai Gun, Nidhogg, and Dive Kick, Nidhogg is the winner. Like,
you know what a game it reminds me of? And you might throw up in your mouth when I say this. Actually, I don't even know if you played this. It was Urban Champion on NES.
oh, I remember that game, but
it was terrible. Like, basically, the idea was you're 2 guys in the street beating the crap out of each other, and you'd start at like the candy store or whatever, and you'd beat each other, and you're like, it's 2D, and the objective is to beat the other guy to the edge of his screen and knock him over, and you'd follow him over. Now you're in front of the barber shop, and you fight again, and then like after I forget how this works exactly, but after you've caused your enemy, or they do it to you, like 3 times, instead of a transition, there's like a manhole on that side of the street. So you try to knock them over until they fall in the manhole, and then you win.
That sounds very similar.
So they basically
actually
ripped off Urban Champion.
Okay, yeah.
The worst NES game ever made.
They made it. They should have just called it Urban Champion 2.
Yeah, they should have.
It's pretty good. And then the other game I've been playing this week is Broken Age. So, yeah, and that game is really good. I kickstarted Broken Age.
Oh, you can't talk about Broken Age.
I can. I received a message directly from Tim Schafer that says embargoes are off.
You know what, Capanius? You're a big influence. We really want this game to do well.
Yeah, exclusive coverage. He said he wanted exclusive coverage on Super Game Talk, so he saw how big it was getting. But I invested in a Kickstarter.
Please don't
2
sue us,
years
Tim
ago.
Schafer.
No, I'm serious. Like, there's no embargoes. Like,
yeah. Well, they had done the embargo thing.
They had started it, and then they emailed people, and they said, like, forget it, that was dumb.
Okay.
No embargoes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they lifted all embargoes. But this Kickstarter was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's a Double Fine adventure game, and I was like, cool. Like, and so I put down $15 in 2012, and now I've gotten this is the first half of Broken Age. And, I mean, now that I have it, like I have Broken Age. So when part 2 comes out, it'll be a free update. But it is really interesting how much time and effort they've put into it. And so the expectations were pretty high. But I have to say it's really well done. I mean, there's not a lot of unknowns to it. There's no big surprise to it. I mean, it is a point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah.
But it is the highest production values of any point-and-click adventure game I've ever played. I mean, the art is fantastic. The voice acting is really good. I mean, it's got Elijah Wood and Jack Black.
Wow.
Yeah,
this might be something good that Jack Black was in.
Yeah. I mean, he has a very minor role, but the writing is really good. It's funny. Mm-hmm. There's some pretty decent poop jokes in there.
Good.
So, yeah.
Now, did you play The Cave? Because it was the same.
No, I didn't.
I haven't played it either. Because the thing is, I haven't followed this game that much because I'm not a big Double Fine person. Not to say that I didn't. Mm-hmm. I dislike their games. I just haven't played any of them. Yeah. I don't think I've played a single Double Fine game.
I played Stacking.
I didn't play that one. I think
that might be the only Double Fine.
But Tim Schafer was involved with Monkey Island, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I did play Monkey Island, but that was before the whole Double Fine thing.
It's basically Tim Schafer and Ron Gilbert, I think, wrote that one together.
Right.
Although I was trying to figure out how much, where the actual creative, points were. What Tim Schafer did and what Ron Gilbert did. It's hard to tell sometimes. But from what I can tell with the sense of humor, I think Tim Schafer had a lot of input into the writing of Monkey Island. Because the humor is similar in Broken Age. It's a little, I don't know, not quite as silly, but it's still pretty good.
Right.
And I guess kind of an overview of what Broken Age is. You start out and there are 2 stories that you get to experience. And it's not clear yet how or if they overlap. I'm assuming there is some overlap, but there is the story of a girl who she's been chosen for this maiden sacrifice in her village, and she's and everybody is oh, we're so happy you've got the honor to be sacrificed to this giant monster. And she's why don't we fight the monster? And they're that's your the idea is just ridiculous to everyone. And the other story is a boy that's in this spaceship that is basically coddled and taken care of by the ship's AI. And you don't know how he got there or what the point, why he is so safeguarded. Every set piece on the ship looks like it was made for a toddler, but the person is looks like maybe a teenager.
Yeah.
And so you don't know if he's been in space longer than he was expected, or if, they just didn't think it through or something. I don't know. So what's cool is that there's a lot of unknowns to the story, that you get to play characters who they don't really know what's going on, but they don't have amnesia.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
The amnesia is that classic, all these games start out with amnesia. So you are it's coming of age story for these 2 characters, and they are outsiders on the social norms of this world. So it makes sense that they're questioning everything and they don't understand this stuff. And so you get to be that protagonist that questions and, figures out this world with them. It's got the same. If point and click adventures games aren't your bag, then this game's not your bag. This game is a point and click adventure.
Who doesn't like point and click adventures, though? What kind of sick commies out there?
There are people that don't like them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not crazy about them, but I enjoy them.
Yeah. I think they're a really unique, kind of relaxing play style.
Yeah, they're
just you experience a good story and you're not completely. It has a level of interactivity where you're controlling where your character goes. A couple of things I think, that they've taken about everything that was good about point and click adventure games, and they made a couple of design improvements. And the first is that first your characters walk really fast. You click somewhere, you don't have to wait for them. If you double click on an exit point, you just go there.
Yeah.
But if you click on something, they don't slowly walk over there to get it. You never feel like you're waiting for them to get there.
Right.
So that's cool. And second of all is that you can switch between either character at any time. So say you're going about, halfway through the story of one character and you're just stumped and that's normally might be when you just save it and close the game. You can switch over to the other character and do that for a while. And then when you come back to this character, so you can set the pacing yourself however you want between one character's story and another character's story.
That's cool. I've wanted to play it for sure. I need to see if I can't get a press copy. Probably not, but might as well try of that. But the Banner Saga came out. Well. I've been hearing nothing but good things about it.
I got that. I haven't played it yet.
Really? Okay.
So I also backed the Banner Saga.
I was very close to it.
Yeah.
I think what happened with Banner Saga, I think it ran out, and I didn't set a reminder for myself. So I think it just kind of fell on it because I was thinking about it. But
I thought Stoic tweeted back at you.
They actually did. I did say something about it, and they gave me an email to send it to, and I sent it, and I never heard anything back. I don't know if they're just super busy right now or if the channel is too small, which that's possible. I don't have a problem if somebody's like, that channel's too small. I can totally understand that logic. To some extent, that's fine. Of course, I'll remember that when I have 500,000 subs and I come over Stoic,
yes,
and they're like, "Oh, can you?" I'm like, "No, too small. Your game is too small." But
it doesn't stop me from trying though. I'll be like, "Hey, can I get a review copy? Can I get a review copy?" Yeah. This Nidhogg review is my first ever review before the game came out. I thought that was The
first one is always, and you're always nervous that you're not going to like it.
Yeah, because you don't want to be like, this was terrible.
This is my first game. It was bad. That happened with me. Drift Moon was the very first game that I got a full copy of. And I was so worried. It's like, man, what if I don't like this game? Yeah. It's like, I have to trash this. And
you want to be honest, but you feel a sense of obligation to the people that believed in you. So it's like...
And, I like trashing a game as much as the next person, but even now, like when it's an indie studio, in my Let's Tries, I don't tend to be like, "Oh, this game is total trash." Like, it's like I took a dump and this game came out. Like, I don't tend to do that just because it is more of a smaller. But I will be honest and say I don't like these things about this game.
Well, to be honest, commentary like that entertains more than it informs anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like people that really get off on like super like angry reviews and sardonic like put downs and stuff. It's like, well, you're not really there to like, is this game good or not?
I will say I like Angry Joe though. Like he definitely goes off on the whole like if a game sucks, like he's gonna rip it into a hole. Yeah. But when he likes a game, he likes a game. Like he does that. He like Guild Wars 2 in particular. Like he was a huge proponent of them, which is funny because they were one of the companies that slapped him with a content ID match and then rejected him. Which that was probably NC Soft because NC Soft is.
But I think as somebody who has a public opinion on a lot of different games, you should be equally like hate and be excited about games too. Because if like you're hating on everything you see, it's like you're not being honest, or like why are you playing games? Like
you mean like oh god, what was it? No punctuation or zero punctuation?
Yeah,
I just stopped watching them because I'm like
at first I was like, this is pretty funny.
Yeah,
and then like okay, like I guess
you hate everything.
I guess that's your bit. Like all right, cool.
Like I mean, like with. I don't know, maybe it's hypocritical, but I love Angry Video Game Nerd. But I guess I go into it knowing
it's his shtick. Yeah.
Like, that's his shtick. That's a character he's completely made up.
If anything, he's satirizing the whole angry nerd like stereotype.
Yeah, so like the zero punctuation, I was thinking, okay, these are legit reviews, but he's very he's very funny, and if he hates a game, he just totally rips it. Or if there's parts of a game he likes, he'll rip it. But like even games that were like really good, he would just nitpick and find things to hate. I'm just like, come on.
There's no such thing as a perfect game. You can find something wrong with every game.
But maybe he doesn't do that anymore. But I stopped watching it a while back.
But it's just there's something exhausting about hearing somebody that's upset about everything. And there's something, refreshing and about like somebody just like, man, I had fun. Like this game is fun. And I think if you're always spouting like a bunch of hate for games, it's like I just can't. I've unfollowed a lot of people because there's just this steady stream of negativity. Like that's not to say like we should all be butterflies and rainbows about every game that comes out. Like there's a balance.
Yeah, there's people on the other side that I can't stand either.
Yeah,
there's like every single game, suit/semi game that comes out. They're like, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. Make sure to use words like that too.
Yeah.
This is epic. This is incredible. Like nothing is just good. Yeah. It has to be absolutely jaw-dropping. It's like it wasn't. It was cool, but it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's people on the other side, and those people can be just as annoying.
Yeah.
Because they also don't give constructive feedback because everything is great to them. So it's not really useful.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be a critic about something that you like, I mean, criticism is both the ability to point out the shortcomings and the like positive, like exceptional things about any given medium. So
yeah,
I think that's an important part of being critical about something.
Yeah.
So here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everyone
preaching
agrees.
to the soapbox. Yeah.
Everybody agrees now.
Or preaching to the choir. I just mix my metaphors there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I do that all the time. It's fun.
Yep. So I think, that's... I am going to play Banner Saga probably this weekend.
Yeah.
I think I can probably set up Steam family sharing if you want to play it, but...
I'm not in the beta yet.
Oh. I thought I don't know. I have to look.
No, that was something different. That was the parental controls or something. Okay. Basically,
that's family controls,
because everybody was like, "Oh my god, family sharing!" In fact, some media outlets were like, "Family sharing is available for everyone." And people were like, "Oh no!" Then they had to update.
Yeah, I tried to set it up last night, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to set it up." And it's like, "All right, now X-rated or M-rated games can't be." It's like, "Wait, what? No,
yeah, they should have named it totally different. It's too close,
too similar. All right, so we got some other topics to discuss today. I think, after CES, there was the biggest announcement that had people talking the most was PlayStation Now.
Right.
And PlayStation Now is not ready now, but PlayStation Now should come later.
Right, and the PS Now, if you're not familiar, is the service that Sony is going to offer where you can play older games. Maybe is it going to go all the way back to PS1 or not?
Yep.
Did they say? Okay, so play certain games from older consoles on your PS4, so you don't have to keep all of your old consoles hooked up if you want to play an old, God of War or Jak and Daxter or what have you.
Well, it'll work on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, Vita, tablets, and smartphones.
Really? On tablets and smartphones?
Yep. I don't know why you would want to play a console game with
a tablet touchscreen,
buttons and joysticks and shoulder buttons and everything, and put it on a touchscreen. That seems dumb to me. But
playing God of War on your iPad.
Now, if they release like some sort of dongle a PlayStation 4 controller is Bluetooth.
Well, there's a thing for Android phones, which I have now. I haven't tried it out. I got it for Christmas, called the Game Clip, where I'll have to show you later if we have time. But basically, it's you connect one part to your phone, and the other part connects to your controller. So it just holds your phone.
So it is a controller?
It's not a controller. It basically holds everything in place.
What kind of controller does it connect to?
PS4.
Okay.
Well, I think it's built for PS3, but I don't think a PS4 would have a problem. I don't think. Because it does come with a cord. Mm-hmm. So you can just plug your phone directly into the controller, but I think you can use Bluetooth too if you have that set up. But it's just so that you can hold the controller and it's always holding the screen at the right angle, and you can play, whatever totally legit games you've downloaded on your emulators.
I mean, I do think that you could maybe play certain RPGs on a tablet, turn-based thing.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics, on a tablet, that would work. But for the most part, I think that's a weird addition. Also, Sony Bravia TVs are going to have it built in.
That's interesting.
So, certain Bravia TVs have the whole smart TV suite of Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff. So presumably when this comes out, it would have a PlayStation Now app pre-installed on the television, so that you just go buy a controller, or maybe it comes with a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 controller, and now you can play those games on your television.
That's crazy. And you wouldn't even have to have a PlayStation at all.
Right.
You would just need the account.
Yeah, you just need the account. The only thing is they still have not said anything about pricing.
Right. I think we can safely assume PlayStation Plus members are not going to get into this for like free. Maybe some kind of a discount,
they might get discount. A game. But see, the thing is that's interesting is there's two ways that they can slice this up and sell it. PlayStation Now will be a service, but there's no guarantee. Like, say you pay into this service, then there's also going to be individual games that you must be licensed to play on that service.
Right.
So they could charge. I mean, they're not going to go this. I don't think they're going to go this aggressively with it, but they could charge you a monthly fee and force you to buy a game on top of that at full price. There's probably going to be some in between where you have a monthly service fee and you have cheap games to get, or you get credits each month to buy games. I don't know.
I think I heard, and I could have misheard, but I think they actually used the term rent at some point.
Yeah,
so that you could rent a game instead of you. Like maybe you can't buy them at all. Maybe it's only a rental type thing, which would be interesting.
I don't think they'll do that. Another interesting thing is that I've owned every PlayStation up to this point, and on PlayStation 3, I went back and purchased several PS1 classics.
Right.
So, in Sony's ecosystem, I am licensed for PlayStation 1 games on PlayStation Network. I'll be upset if those PS1 licenses don't transfer somehow to PlayStation Now. Because I shouldn't have to re-buy Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 2 to play it on PlayStation Now.
I could definitely see being upset. In fact, I probably would not like that at all. But I can see them saying, this is different. You have to buy it again. Like that would, it would still suck. It would absolutely still suck. Because the same's going to work. Like if I've got God of War 3, right? Mm-hmm. I'm probably going to still have to rent or buy or whatever God of War 3 to play. But
even then, they have the excuse of like, oh, well, you bought it in physical medium and we just don't have the ability to transfer people's physical discs to a digital license. I already have a digital license for a PlayStation 1 game. Like, they have no excuse. Like, all it comes down to is these companies have excuses to not offer this digital license to you.
Right.
And so, at that point, they don't have one. And I'm just going to say, it'll be interesting to see how they position themselves if they do decide that PlayStation 1 license doesn't count. How are they going to sell that? I mean, they could offer like a one-time like upgrade fee, like turn your PlayStation 1 Classic to the PlayStation 1 or the PlayStation Now Classic. I don't know. They have a serious branding problem with this stuff. It's going to be confusing if they don't set up the pricing and the license structure in a way that makes sense to people.
Yeah.
Because if they try to be really aggressive and slice this thing up, as Sony has done in the past, like if they try to slice it as a completely separate thing, then people are going to get confused about like, oh, well, I bought Final Fantasy VIII as a PlayStation 1 Classic, but I did not buy Final Fantasy VIII on PlayStation Now, or I rented it. You know, the license structure could get really confusing fast.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to run through my head. I can't see a scenario where, again, they would charge for it as a service unless, as part of being charged for it, you get, like, you say credits. Like, is it
Audible?
Audible does, right, where you pay a monthly fee and you get, like, X number of credits that you can use towards books, like, not really for free. But is there any other reason to pay per month? I don't remember for Audible.
Well, Audible, you pay monthly and you get credits.
Right, but I think that's the only reason, right? That you would pay monthly. There's not something else that it unlocks, right? By being a member.
Right.
But you can also just buy the books outright if you want.
But it's one of those things where it's like, even if you want, like, buying them outright, buying a single one outright is more expensive than buying a monthly. So
right. Now that would be interesting if they did that.
Yeah.
If they went with that model.
I was thinking about another thing. It's like, what if they just went where it's like Netflix. You pay monthly and you have access to everything. Like, it's $10 a month or something. But
I think that's highly unlikely.
I mean, but it's, if they got down to the sub $10 price point, it's one of those things that
everybody would get.
Everybody gets and just has it. And you don't, like, I don't evaluate whether I should keep Netflix or not. I've had Netflix now for like 3 straight years, and it's $8 a month, and it's like, you know, that's a hamburger. Like,
yeah.
It's like, you know, that's nothing. You know, so Netflix and Hulu are just automatic monthly things for me. You know, if it was like GameFly, I have had GameFly on and off several times. It's $15 a month. It's like, I don't want it this month. You know, and so at a certain point, a monthly price point for a service either makes you reevaluate it or not.
Yeah.
And if it was $10 for all those games, I wouldn't evaluate it. Just like, yeah, it's automatic.
The question comes in then, how are they going to divvy that up with publishers? Because
like Netflix does on per plays or per views.
So I'm wondering, you know, have they had enough time to be talking with all these publishers and developers and come up with this? So is it going to be like Netflix which I kind of assume that not every game is going to be there. There's going to be certain games that are going to be available.
Yeah, I think not only for the licensing headaches, but also for the technology and also for the press, they're going to phase in their availability. So like each month there'll be like new titles added to PlayStation Now, and like they'll want to always have that, like, because right now they get a good marketing push every other or twice a month when they say what the new PlayStation PS Plus games are. It hits every blog, like everybody's talking about it, and so it's like these are the new games that are going to be free this month, and I think they like that monthly draw. You know, it's just an automatic news story.
So I do wonder though, like let's say you've bought games digitally for PS3. Let's say I bought, you know, Splinter Cell Blacklist digitally on PS3, and I've, you know, ditched my PS3 and I have a PS4 now. Are they going to say, well, even though this is tied to your account, since you're playing it with PlayStation Now, we're going to have to charge you? I can see that because it's still costing them something to, you know, the bandwidth and the processing power.
I think that would hurt them, though. Like, I think that would look bad.
I don't think they have a choice.
What do you mean? They have a choice.
Well, they have a choice, but you got all these people who have maybe bought games.
Like, if I just bought Last of Us for $60, a digital copy, and it was available on PlayStation Now, and I assume it will be because it's the one title they're showing off everywhere. Like, I would assume I should be able to play that without paying more money on my PS4. Like, I know that's terribly optimistic of me, but I just feel like that's what someone should do.
I would say temper expectations.
Yeah.
If anyone out there is thinking that's the way it's going to go. I'm not saying that I totally think it's not going to happen that way. I'm saying it's very, very possible that it won't.
Yeah. Because
they're going to see it as they're eating up our bandwidth and eating up our server farms of PlayStations for free. Yes, you bought the game, but if you bought the game physically or whatever, you just download it and play it. And I'm just trying to think of this from like their perspective. Obviously, it's going to hurt them PR wise. Yeah. If you say you bought it, but now you got to buy it again, or now you have to rent it.
I think then they should. If the best way to do that would be to separately price the service. So, say the service is $5 a month for the ability to play PlayStation Now games. You get a free PlayStation Now game of our choice once a month, and in addition, any games you've purchased are playable immediately. So then it's like $5 to have the ability to do PlayStation Now.
What if they did something like you bought Last of Us digitally on PS3? You can turn in, air quotes, your copy, and you can play it on PlayStation.
They're not going to do any physical, like...
I'm not... Digital.
Oh, wait. Okay, you can turn in your
digital copy. That's why I did air quotes.
Okay.
Your digital copy so that you couldn't play it on the PS3, but now you can play it through PS Now.
That would be really weird.
That'd be definitely very odd.
Yeah.
But it would also keep the issue of I've got to play. Let's say you had a PlayStation 3. You bought Last of Us digitally. You bought it. You installed it. You bought a PS4. I bought your PS3, and it's still got PS3 or it's still got Last of Us on there. I can play the game, and now you can go play it on PS Now, right?
You know what they might do for people that have digital or physical copies? Sorry, my brain's skipping around a lot. But there's a lot of possibilities for how to do this. One thing they could do is if you have a physical copy of any PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 game, you stick it in the PlayStation 4, and it can read the security code on it. Like, it can't run the game.
Right.
But it can authenticate that you have a legit copy of that game and then play it that way.
Yeah, I was thinking that would be awesome. Like, even if, obviously this is not ideal, but I mean, you look over there stacked very professionally and neatly on the floor. I have like a stack of PS3 games that I haven't touched or that I would like to go back to. There's God of War over there. There's that Rockstar Western game that I totally just spaced on.
Oh, Red Dead Redemption?
Yes, Red Dead Redemption. A bunch of games. I would love for them to say, look, you still have to pay, but maybe you pay like a lot less if I just put the disc in and verify, yes, I've got a legit copy. Like, something like that would be really cool. Or free. Like, but I mean, I think we're living in a fantasy world to say, oh, if we just put the disc in, they'll just do it free. I think that's a stretch.
Yeah. I think there's going to be some service fee.
Yeah, I think a discount is somewhat possible and that could possibly keep the publishers happy because now those discs still have value.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be really like to know the discussions that they're having with the publishers.
Yeah.
And saying how they're selling this to the publishers and the developers as to how it's okay. But I mean, if you think about it, they're only streaming older games anyway, so it's not like they're selling the new stuff.
Yeah, and that's the idea. There's always going to be the new hotness PlayStation 4 games that are like this is the latest and greatest stuff. And I think if you want to play that, it's only going to be rendered on a PlayStation 4. Like, you're never going to be able to play PlayStation 4 games in PlayStation Now on your Bravia TV. Like, I think they could do that if they wanted to. I think they're going to not do that. Like, because the people that want to play those games are the ones with the devices where the game is rendered locally.
That could be a lot of data, though. Because I mean, that brings us to the other issue,
which
when you talked about
all of this is contingent upon like, will it even work?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, that's the big question, and I don't know. I for games like RPGs and adventure games where the latency doesn't matter that much.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody's going to really care, but things like shooters.
No one is going to want to play Street Fighter 4 on PlayStation Now.
I was thinking how awesome it would be to play Street Fighter 4 or some other fighting game over PS Now via the online.
Well, you know what's cool about that? I read an article where somebody was saying that for online matches, you're actually going to have less latency between... Like, if I'm playing Street Fighter 4 on PlayStation Now against you... who's playing Street Fighter 4 on PlayStation Now, then theoretically those virtual PlayStations are in the same data center.
Right.
And so the only latency comes from what that PlayStation is rendering and what you're seeing down to your house. So it's not 4 times the latency, it's just 2 times the latency. Because the input latency between the online connection, it's like, probably 1 millisecond ping. But all of this really is contingent upon the fact that for most people, residential internet, people care about bandwidth, but residential internet has really spotty latency.
Yeah.
And latency is going to matter just as much for playing these games as bandwidth is.
Well, latency probably would be even much bigger, I would think.
Yeah, because but the thing is, bandwidth is still going to matter up to a certain point. Like, I think as long as you have at least 7 or 8, you should be fine on the bandwidth part of it. And a lot of people don't. So that still is an issue for some people. But a lot of people have 30 meg, but bad latency.
Yeah.
And for video content, latency doesn't matter. It just matters to that initial startup of it. But then once the video is running, you're streaming. You know, it's no problem. But for a game, there's a constant input output. You know, it's not just the output of the video. It has to take the input of your controls, receive it on the rendering unit or whatever technology they use to virtualize this stuff, and then push out the results to your video.
So I mean, well, first of all, satellite users, you are right out.
Yeah, forget it. Just forget it.
Satellite latency is god awful. But I just really want to try this. They had it at CES, and I know somebody was there, and I was like, "Hey, go try it." He took a video of it. I'm like, "It's not the same thing. I need you to get your hands on it and try it out." But like I say, action games, I really want to see how off it feels. If it's not much, it's something you can kind of get yourself acquainted to.
Well, the funny thing is that journalists were saying "Oh, it works, it works."
But
the server was in the same room as them.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
man, really
that's equivalent to saying the Wii U works because that pipes data local. The Wii U gamepad is a terminal, and it's just piping video over IP to that terminal, and so they were just showing off the same stuff as the Wii U gamepad.
It's the same way the Vita works, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same way the Vita works. So it's they weren't saying anything new because it was in. The question is, will the latency in the video transmit over the internet pipes as effectively as it does on locally? That's the thing that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm skeptical, but I want to be optimistic because I hate having to keep all my consoles out, and it's only going to get worse over time. It would just be awesome if this works good enough. If I could play God of War, I'll be tickled pink. I'll be happy. All right, I'm done. This is a great service. If that's the case. But the other games I want to play are Devil May Cry because I need to play those old ones, and those are very, very fast, hot and heavy. So I think those will be a critical test, and obviously fighting games. But luckily, I don't play fighting games. But fighting games would be huge. But fighting game players are usually moving on to the new hotness anyway, and I imagine there'll probably be a Street Fighter 4 for PS4. Surely,
it still hasn't been announced. And Capcom supposedly there is a show in Taipei next week that Yoshinoro Ono. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing it terribly. Basically the director for Street Fighter 4. He's going to be announcing something. He could just be announcing the 5th character. Yeah. He could be announcing that Street Fighter 4 Ultra Street Fighter 4 will be on PS4.
Yeah.
To be honest, if Ultra doesn't make it to 4, then they're probably just going to say 5 will be on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
I mean, has there been any rumblings of a Street Fighter 5 though?
No.
Any legit ones? I can't see Ultra not hitting the PS4. Unless the game just doesn't sell well at all. But I mean, I don't know the fighting
game
community that
it's
fair, I guess.
How many people care enough about if you're super into Street Fighter 4 at this point and you're at the point where you're still in it and you want Ultra, are you going to want it also on the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One just because? I mean, there's not anything that the PlayStation 4 Xbox One can do for Street Fighter 4 that can't be done on the 360 and PS3.
Yeah.
And I mean, Injustice is an interesting example about that because Injustice was released on the PlayStation 4, but
3. You
for
mean,
both? Yeah,
I thought you meant originally. Yeah,
it was released, for the PS3, but then the Ultimate Edition came out for both for PS3 and PS4, and no one serious is really playing on PS4 because there's no fight stick available for PS4, and it doesn't really offer a whole lot. And it would be interesting if there was some sort of fight stick available for it. So if you were nuts about Injustice and you bought the Crazy Edition with the fight stick for the PS3, that even though it's a USB, they did not patch it to work on PS4. even though they could, and they should have, in my opinion, because people bought this fight stick, and then months later they can't play it on the new platform. But all that to say, there's not a lot of people even making pad hacks for PS4 because people are taking apart their controllers and soldering into it. But I was following Ben Heckendorn. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
But he's this guy that just does all these crazy mods and stuff. He was one of the first people to start taking apart games and making portable versions of consoles. He made a portable SNES and a portable 64 way back. He's doing usability hacks for PS4 controllers. And so he was talking today about how the solder points on them are just you can break it if you don't know what you're doing. It's really sensitive. And so a lot of these people trying to do pad hacks to get a fight stick on PlayStation 4 are going through controllers. You lose $60 if you mess it up. So
screw that noise.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for the update to the PS360 PCB, or they're probably not going to be able to do an update. They're going to have to add an add-on module or something for it so that I can play a fight stick on the PS4. But until all of that crap gets sorted, no one's really playing fighting games on the PS4.
Yeah. Or the Xbox One, other than Killer Instinct.
Yeah, Killer Instinct does have a fight stick, but it's the $200 fight stick. Yeah. It's
did you buy that yet?
No. What's funny is if there was one for the PS4, I would have considered it, but I would have hopefully been reasonable enough to not do that in that alternate dimension.
Yeah, well, yeah. Don't know about that.
I think that going back to PlayStation Now, I think it's lost. There's just way more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the pricing and the licensing and what games are available, all of that just plays second fiddle right now to will it actually work?
Yeah.
Or work well enough.
Yeah.
For me and you, and because it's going to be a person by person basis.
Yeah,
that's something Sony's going to have a big headache they're going to have to deal with is people who have 1 meg DSL internet and they're like, I can't play my games. Your service is screwed up.
I feel sorry for the people that work customer support.
It's going to be awful
now because they're going to get so many calls from people that's my internet works. Why does this one thing not work? And people aren't going to really. Your average person is not going to understand both bandwidth and latency requirements and why their PlayStation Now isn't working. And they're just going to have thousands of calls every day.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be a serious problem with customer education. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you're just flaking out because your network's bad. It's well, I can stream Netflix, and that's in real-life graphics.
Yeah, so no matter how good of an algorithm they write for this PlayStation Now thing, they can't change the fact of how fast bits get from one point to another. You can't fake it. And so
surprise announcement: Sony's running fiber everywhere.
Yeah,
they beat Google to the punch.
If you have Google Fiber, I would be interested to see how well PlayStation Now runs on Google Fiber because that would be pretty awesome.
Get the speed of light going.
Yeah.
That would be sexy. Hurry up, Google.
Yeah.
Get on the ball.
Google Fiber needs to partner with Sony PlayStation Now.
Well, they bought Nest, so they're getting in the house. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe they bought Nest, which I'm sure they've got a plan.
Yeah.
But God knows what it is.
We actually just got a Nest at the office.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Which is funny because we were talking about getting one before this news came out, but Nests are good for the office because we have a small office. There's only 5 people that work there, but if you think about it, you're only there for half the time on weekdays and not at all on the weekends. So you could save a lot of money if you have a thermostat that knows when to turn itself down and turn itself on. But now that this happened, it's oh great, are we going to have to activate with our Google account? Nest needs you to use your first and last names.
Log in with Google Plus to check
it.
God, no. Yeah. So what do we want to talk about next? Wait, one question I was going to ask real quick. Does Microsoft said anything about a similar service for Xbox One?
I have not read anything, and in fact, I've heard more rumblings that Twitch streaming is further off than expected.
Well, yeah, because Twitch themselves even said it was like at least a few months off. Yeah. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous.
I'm going to make a prediction, and I could be totally wrong. No Twitch streaming for Xbox One this year.
That's insane. You're a madman.
It's gonna put it off, and it's gonna not be until 2015. That's my prediction.
I don't see it. I think, like, right now it might not be a priority. Maybe they're working on other things. But if it keeps dragging out and PlayStation can stream on Twitch,
it's going to be big. But I just think back of all of the promises from previous Xbox firmware updates that took longer than expected, and even years longer than expected.
But this is a pretty big one.
Yeah, but it's got to be such a huge...
How is it? I mean, I don't get why it's so bad. I mean, the PlayStation had it at launch.
Yeah, but the PlayStation has a specific coprocessor for streaming out frames that the Xbox processor doesn't have.
Wouldn't that be a bastard where they're like, you know what? It just can't do it.
They might have it so that only certain games support it.
Oh, man. It would be... that would be just like... Yeah. If that happens... Microsoft, like, people coming into work are just hanging their head in shame. It's just like, or you can stream every game in 320p.
Yeah, that would be another possibility. It's just down sampling.
That would be, man. Sony's just sitting back like, let them do our work for us. We ain't gonna do anything about it. Let them just dig their own graves.
I mean, they did a good job by designing the system around that ability. And it's going to be really difficult for Microsoft. I'm not saying it's impossible. My prediction is more just because I see that as a possibility. But it is really difficult to add a feature like that when the system wasn't designed to do that from the start.
Did they announce Twitch streaming after PlayStation or not? Or streaming?
Did. Yes. Well, PlayStation was the first people to say we're going to have streaming built in.
Okay.
But they said you stream.
Right.
And then Xbox is like, yeah, we're going to do that, and it's going to be Twitch. And then PlayStation was like, oh, we can do Twitch too. And then they had it at launch, and then Microsoft didn't. It's a really weird back and forth.
Yeah, okay. I think that's what's confusing me. I keep thinking Microsoft was Twitch, and therefore they were the first to announce it. But then you're right. PlayStation actually announced streaming period first, and then Xbox was like, that's too... But... we don't know for a fact that wasn't in there from the beginning, though. They just announced it later.
I don't know for a fact, but just judging by how things went and how it wasn't available at day one, I would assume that it wasn't in the original plan. If it was in the original plan, it should have been there on day one. So
I would agree with that,
either way,
except they had to do like so much other crap because of this whole... like backing out on the online crap. I bet that took some serious engineering resources.
I don't know. I just think it took more business and design resources than engineering resources, because ultimately it's just saying, okay, this image doesn't have to use this service. Like, this service we wrote for it is no longer used. Like, if anything, it's just scrapping a thing that was written. It was more of a waste.
I guess I was thinking, like, what if you designed something that just you assumed it was always connected to the internet? So everything you did was built around, you have the internet, and if you don't, then like everything is, throwing up errors and whatnot. So now they come and say, oh, by the way, you can't make that assumption anymore.
It really depends on how well written it was to begin with. Because if they wrote it, intelligently, so that you use an abstraction layer where all of your communications, and this is very fundamental stuff. But if you have it's called a communication pipe. If you have a communication pipe and you use the same class to construct and get information out of that pipe, then you just rewrite that class.
Right.
Now, if they wrote it in such a way that like it doesn't use an abstraction layer for internet communication, and the code just goes out to the internet and gets it, then you have to rewrite each section of that code in all these different places. Microsoft writes bad code, but I don't know if they write that bad code. I mean, like, I've had to use Microsoft libraries before, and they're nuts about abstraction layers. They abstract things when there doesn't need to be abstraction. So I think that wasn't that difficult.
Okay. I'm not saying that I am like totally convinced that it was in, but I think it's a possibility that they had planned it and just announced it later, and then we're busy with other stuff. But
I think that's possible.
It is taking a long time.
Yeah.
So now it's getting harder to believe that they were just held up by this other, like, oh God, we had to change this now.
Yeah.
That's becoming less believable the longer it takes for Twitch to get it. All right, so what else did we want to talk about tonight?
The only other CES topic I thought was notable was there's a bunch of Steam machines announced.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love Valve. Like, I get on Steam a lot. I don't really know anybody that's excited about Steam machines. Like, if you were super excited about Steam machines, you would have just bought a PC by now.
Yeah.
Like, so I think the concept of Steam machines, there isn't really a consumer that exists that wants it. Now, maybe if they market in such a way where there's a low enough price point and there's some sort of crazy deal with bundled games, they could appeal to somebody that is not into PC gaming. But I think that they have a really difficult uphill battle, and their approach is too fragmented to be effective. Like, it's the same problem that Google faced with Android phones, in that when you fragment it across so many different manufacturers, you don't necessarily have a flagship. This is the thing that we represent. Like, if you go to a store and somebody is like, I want an iPhone, you get an iPhone, But if you go, I want an Android phone, then your average person is a little overwhelmed by all the possibilities. Now,
but
Android has done a good job. Samsung has risen to the top as like, this is the flagship, or even there is a Google phone,
right?
Like, there's a Nexus phone, and so there is kind of that flagship to show. So Android has mitigated that problem, but it seems to me like right now the Steam machines are all a free for all, like. And the lowest price point's like $500. So, if you can build a computer for $700. Now, the counter argument is like, well, yeah, this is for people who don't want to build a computer.
Right.
But the people that don't want to build that computer are going to be frustrated with the lack of available games on Linux at this point. And so it's a chicken egg problem. They need more people to get on that platform to justify more games on that platform. But more games won't come to that platform until more people are on that platform.
So have they said that, so it's all of them 100% are always running Linux. So you can only play games. I thought they were working on, I thought the part of the Steam OS thing was that it doesn't matter if it's Windows or Mac or whatever, it would play on Steam OS.
Steam OS, it has to run on Linux. Like, it's not going to support Windows games. So
Windows only games.
Yeah, exactly. And so there is going to be a streaming feature where if you have a Windows PC, you can stream that to this. But if you have a Windows PC, why are you buying a Steam machine?
Right.
Unless you have a really beefy Windows machine and you just want a really thin Steam machine for like your TV,
right?
But
that's $500.
Yeah, exactly.
The thinnest is $500, which is still pretty.
So there's still a lot of just confusion, and really, I mean, a lot of people cover this, and it's like, who are they for? What is it for? Like, Valve's real intent on this play is to get their reliance off of Windows. Like, they don't necessarily want to be this amazing hardware vendor. In fact, they're eliminating all risk by letting other companies take the risk. Mm-hmm. All these other companies are the ones that are pushing out money to make these Steam machines. Valve isn't like spending money on the Steam machine initiative.
Right.
But they want as many like users and testers for their Steam OS so that eventually it it has more games on that platform. And so that they no longer have the reliance on Windows.
Right.
Because Microsoft was really smart in spending a lot of money and making DirectX good. DirectX has been good since like the mid-90s. At least it's been good enough to have consensus among developers and publishers. So developers and publishers are okay with DirectX, and they make a lot of things for DirectX. And since it's DirectX, it will only run on Windows. And so if they make it so that it works on OpenGL or other rendering platforms, it'll work on Mac OS and Linux. But you can tell it just anecdotally. There's a lot of games that don't run on Mac OS and Linux because they have some reliance on DirectX, whether it's DirectX isn't just graphics renderings. I mean, there's sound APIs, there's control input APIs, it's a whole suite of APIs that the OS uses. And so really though, when Windows 8 was such a, like, as somebody who had to develop an application, or at least a portion of an application on Windows 8, it was a mess for developers. And like, if I was a project manager for the Steam client, I would be pissed at all the things that Microsoft forced developers to do. And as a result, Gabe is like, fuck this. Like, we need to find a way to get off of Windows. Like, we need to have our own thing. And with Linux, you could build a kernel around games. You could have like latency priorities on input, so like your gamepad has the highest priority. And so you can have cut out latency, and you can make the whole thing from the ground up about games. Sure, this OS could have terrible printer support. Yeah. But with Linux, you can make decisions like that. And so I think ultimately that's Valve's play. That's what they want out of all this. And the whole Steam Machines initiative is just a way for other manufacturers to take the risk to get as many people on a base that developers are comfortable making games for it.
Right.
So I downloaded, I'm going to try to do this week. They finally added support for ATI video cards into SteamOS. So I'm going to try to dual boot my computer with it.
Yeah.
Now, the tricky thing about SteamOS is it doesn't support dual boot on a hard drive. Like, I have to basically get a new hard drive. This is SteamOS. It's not dual booting off multiple partitions on the same drive. SteamOS has to live alone on that drive.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's in beta. Like,
yeah.
It'll eventually support it. It's just like no one's working on that yet. But it is quite poorly documented how to install it. Like, there's no unified installer. There's multiple ways to do it. It's really just Debian Linux at this point. But anyway, like I think from a business standpoint, Steam Machines in and of themselves don't make sense. But this is all Valve's greater play to get off of Windows.
Right. Didn't Gabe say something specific negative about Windows 8 when it was still in beta?
Oh, he was publicly railed on it multiple times, and justifiably. Like, they did the most inane, stupid shit I've ever seen. Like, and I still refuse to use Windows 8 just on principle. Like, I know a lot of the problems have been smoothed over. It's not as bad.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of the Metro thing, but as an application developer, Windows 8 is like a schizophrenic operating system. They intentionally firewalled off any like application development between Metro mode and classic desktop mode. Mm-hmm. So all these Win32 APIs that you would use to load files or send files over the internet or anything had new versions for Windows 8. And like, if you wrote this Win32, it would still work. But when you go to Metro mode, try communicating with that user. It was a pain in the butt. Like, it was awful. And they wrote it in such a way so that they could have this like OS layer where you would buy apps, and everything, and you'd run the Metro apps, and you'd have the tile mode that would translate well to a a tablet that would be in WinRT, which would run on ARM, or you'd have, their original initiative was to have like Xbox One. So you'd have all these tiled apps things. So you'd have a sandwalled operating system. So essentially, to keep compatibility with old Windows applications, you would have the classic, Windows 7 stuff, and Windows 8 would be an OS that ran on top of classic Windows. And it was just a mess. It was totally a mess. And Gabe, on multiple times, was like, this is stupid. This is dumb. And Microsoft didn't like that, and he didn't like it. And so it was just interesting. So this is what Gabe is trying to do to get off of the Windows reliance. And if it works out, then if you're a PC builder, that means you don't have to spend $100 on an operating system. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's a big bonus. I like not having to buy Windows. It's pretty sweet.
But I would guess it would take at least 5 years of market share erosion before people thought Steam OS is where PC games are.
Right.
It's a long ways off if that pans out. So this is his transition. This is his pivot to try to make that happen. But it's going to take several years if it does work.
Yeah. And the other thing I see is people buying a Steam machine thinking, oh, well, I'm going to A, jump into this PC gaming thing, or B, I'm going to have access to all my games. And then they load it up and it's like, half of them aren't even there.
Or if they're going to be I'm going to play Diablo 3 or I'm going to play World of Warcraft. It's like, I can't play any Blizzard games?
Yeah.
And how long before you can play a Blizzard game on Steam OS? That's going to be weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did they make their games compatible with Linux? I thought they did.
I thought that was a beta that got scrapped.
Oh, was it?
I knew that they were looking at it and they were working on it, but I don't know if it actually ever came out.
And everything I've seen shows the gaming Linux population is anemic. It's just
it is
pathetic.
But it would be a cool place. If there was consensus and PC games were on Linux, it could be really cool. It could be really good for the community.
Yeah.
Because Windows is bloated and Windows does a lot of things to interfere with your gaming. And Windows is literally the only reason, or gaming is the only reason I still have Windows in my life. I have a Mac laptop that I code on, and that I email and do life stuff or whatever. But I have a Windows desktop, and that's all I do on is game. So if I could get rid of Windows, that'd be great. But that's just me.
I see indies making this transition a lot faster for multiple reasons. One of the big ones is, the developers are having to deal with the nonsense of Windows 8. Well, with an indie company, it's a much smaller team, and sometimes it's the developer and the designer, So half your team is like, this sucks. We need to start making this transition to Linux, and it's an easier choice as opposed to these bigger studios where the developers don't have any real say. They're basically just told, well, we don't care if you don't like it. You're just going to do it. And they're going to look at Linux and they're going to say 1% of, people bought this game on Linux. So it's not worth it for you guys to be, spending who knows how long to convert this to Linux. So I wonder if what Valve is doing to try to make this transition as easy as possible. I would think if I were Valve, I would be doing whatever I could to make it easier for everybody from indie game devs to these big studios to make that transition to SteamOS as easy as possible, because they know, again, for indies, not as much. I mean, obviously they have limited resources with very few people and very little money. But it's easier to convince them, and especially even if it's not even a money thing. It's like, look, we're trying to make this movement. We're trying to make this kind of a cultural movement, if you will, to Linux. Help us with this, and they're more likely to go, yeah, you're right. Let's screw Windows.
But that probably is part of their plan. But they have to get to the point where SteamOS is a viable platform,
right?
And so that's probably like something that, and who knows, those discussions are probably happening right now. But, for every 50 indie studios that move over to SteamOS, that is like, it's going to take like 50 before one AAA studio is like, okay, let's make the move, And so it's going to be a ton of indie game studios that are okay with it because they can do it. But until a AAA studio is like, all right, let's do this, they're not going to make a lot of traction in that unless Half-Life 3 is exclusive to SteamOS. That is going to be some crazy news if that happens.
Yeah, I could see them doing that.
That would be the most crazy, ballsy, wonderful thing I could imagine happening. Like, I just see, like, that would be hilarious.
So, but is the SteamOS itself still pretty, like, flaky?
Well, it's running on a very solid version of Debian Linux, and so like at its core, the kernel and everything are fine, but it's the implementations, the drivers, the actual Steam client, they're still pretty buggy. Like, do
you think they're that way even on the Steam machines, since they have a set hardware that they're using?
Maybe not, because they can prioritize those drivers, and they can eliminate a lot of the issues associated with driver conflicts. So they could be, but are there any street dates on Steam Machine availability?
Not that I saw.
I know there's prototypes out there, in addition to the ones that Valve sent out. Valve sent out like 300 to people in loot crates or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, they were actually wooden crates that people had to open up. I thought that was pretty cool. But I noticed that like Gigabyte was sending out their, I think it's one of the $500 ones. They have this Bricks Pro thing that's a Steam machine. Zen Studios just tweeted that they received one. So developers are receiving third-party Steam machine prototypes.
Right.
So I think that's kind of interesting. Like, what does Gigabyte care if Zen Studio develops for Steam Machine?
Yeah, I would think there's probably some Valve incentive. You were talking earlier about Valve not putting money into it. I bet they did.
I guess I meant
not as much.
Yeah,
it's not. It's an investment.
They have skin in the game, but just not like.
Yeah, it's an investment, but it's not a huge investment. Where if it just goes to hell, they're in deep trouble.
Yeah, I'm sure they spent money to assuage these manufacturers to make a Steam machine.
I started to think about timing. I was like, well, maybe this is just too early. The OS seems to be, from what I'm hearing, a little flaky. But maybe they did it now because they want to get in ahead, right? They want to get people thinking, or developers in these game companies thinking about, well, maybe we should start looking at the Steam thing instead of waiting 6 months from now. And they're like, okay, that you can buy one tomorrow. Then it's going to be like, well, whoa, we weren't really ready for this.
And maybe they want developers to start thinking of the ways that Windows has been a pain in the butt. Like,
right.
Oh, maybe this is... Because, I mean, as any developer, like, there are certain things that you kind of, like, get aware of. It's like, man, this part really sucked when I had to do this one thing for Windows. But I don't know how much that applies for gaming, because games are a different animal than application development. So,
yeah. Have you done any game development at all?
I've done a little bit. It's a little history for the podcast, but a few years ago we had an idea for a game we were working on. Me and Johnny and a couple of other people we worked with would meet on our lunch hour to discuss design of it. It was called Lunch Hour Games, and one guy was kind of the lead programmer. He did most of the work, but he did a lot of stuff in XNA. And XNA is Microsoft's framework for writing a game in both Windows and for Xbox 360. And, it is its own abstraction layer on top of DirectX stuff. So, it has its own frame handler and, has its own rendering pipeline and all that stuff. So, like, that was really, I went through and like understood what was going on, with all the code, but I didn't actually write a lot of my own code. Most of it was design, we were kind of working on design before the whole thing kind of fell apart.
And our idea got stolen anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's funny how our game, which I don't think it matters anymore, actually started off a lot like Walking Dead did.
How so? Oh, you mean like
the actual story?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We actually, so it was actually, I had this idea years ago, but the idea was to make an Oregon Trail game set in a zombie world. And, you'd have the same concepts of resource limitation and resource management you did in Oregon Trail, but, you had to worry about zombies. And I'm sure by now you probably know where this is going, but Oregon Trail was pretty much that. And we were designing a different game where, like, it was going to be more of a turn-based tile, like tactics combat kind of game, kind of like Ogre Battle or Final Fantasy Tactics, where you would have battle sequences in addition to travel sequences and scavenging sequences. And so it was kind of going to be different layers of games. But the story we were working on was that the main character actually comes to in jail, and he's trying to get attention from somebody. He has no idea what happened, and so we wrote out this story and everything, and it's like, oh, this is very similar to The Walking Dead. Well, he starts out, he's in the back of a police car, but he is a detainee, and he is in jail when all that stuff happens, and it's like that was before Walking Dead came out, so we were just didn't put the execution together, and really that is one of the most important parts of it. It's like you have to be able to not just have ideas, but
there was other parts of it too, like in Walking Dead, you're wondering about his past, why was he obviously was a murder involved. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of questioning, what kind of person is this? And we
explicitly wrote that point that you would always wonder that as the game went on, like why this guy was in jail at the beginning. Like you don't immediately get the explanation,
right? And I thought that was a good premise that Travis totally ripped off of Walking Dead somehow in the future.
Yes, exactly. With my time machine,
but he didn't beat Walking Dead to the punch on that one, but. But yeah, we'll see. I really want the Steam machines to take off, but I'm kind of like,
yeah. I mean, any new gamers or new PC gamers, it's awesome. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to PC gaming is thriving. I mean, I don't know why every now and again somebody pretends that PC gaming is dead, but.
I haven't legitly heard somebody say that.
It's usually somebody pretty stupid. But when you look at I don't know, Diablo 3 sales or DayZ sales. I mean, DayZ already sold 1 million units. It's alpha. It's not even a game.
Oh no,
it's a game under construction.
He's went there.
Yeah, I went there. And I wonder on top of that how many people bought the Arma 3 DayZ mod on the Humble Bundle. Did you see that?
I heard about it.
There's a Humble Bundle that has Arma 2, actually. And packaged with it, it says Arma 2 DayZ mod. Like, it's packaged in the Humble Bundle. I wonder how many people bought that out of mistake. Like, oh, I've heard of DayZ. I'll get that.
Oh, God.
But,
probably a bit.
Yeah, so 1 million of that alpha has already been sold. So, there's a lot of people playing PC games out there.
I mean, League of Legends is still huge.
Yeah.
And, it's... I don't think any sane person at this point thinks PC gaming is in trouble. And for maybe there was at least a 10, 15 year span there at least where people are like, oh, PC gaming is dying. And people kept saying, no, it's not. It's fine. And
I think the long console life cycle was the biggest boon to PC gaming because after 7 or 8 years, it's like people are like, hey, you can come over here and you can get a brand new system and you can get all the latest graphics. The disparity or the difference between an Xbox 360 game and a PC game getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And so the PC version of Tomb Raider versus the Tomb Raider on the 360 were huge difference. And that's why it's funny to see all these people like wanting the definitive edition of Tomb Raider. It's like, I already played the definitive edition.
We already have it.
Yeah.
It's already out.
Tress effects and everything, man. It was there. It was awesome.
And we have the hair. It's awesome. It's amazing.
But yeah, I think that was a big boost to getting a lot of people into PC gaming. So
yeah. I think it helped a lot. And the technology now has gotten to the point where the new video cards, I mean, they're better. And you can now run, this game at even higher resolution at super ultra graphics. Mm-hmm. But if you just want to play a game on a decent sized monitor at a reasonable resolution, and you're okay with medium to high graphics, you can buy a darn good machine for not a lot of money.
If you are okay, like 1080p, you can run. You don't need a beefy GPU to run at 1080p anymore. Like. It's really people that are pushing past 1080p when you start getting diminishing returns. But it's like, if you're okay with 920 by 1080, you can get a really, you can get like $100 GPU probably and be okay with a lot of games. I mean, you can run that at a modest, on a modest GPU.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if that's not going to work, you could just drop it to a 720p resolution.
Yeah.
And you won't notice a huge difference. It'll be noticeable, but you won't be like, oh, this game looks like crap now.
Yeah.
So, because I've told people to do that before if they like really old machines. It was like, well, just drop the resolution.
If you're having trouble, just turn the shadows off.
Yeah. Shadows is definitely one of the most notorious
It's like a cliche at this point. Like, oh man, it just runs like crap. Turn the shadows off. Oh, I got 60 frames.
Yeah. That added 20 frames right there by itself. Yeah. Shadows are pretty bad.
Well, I think we're going to unfortunately have to cut it at that point. We've got so much more to talk about.
Yeah. We could do a bi-weekly podcast.
Yeah, I could do a daily podcast at this point. This is no problem. This is no problem at all.
Would people find the time to listen to 2 to 3 hours of gaming podcast? I'm so sick of hearing about video games.
Stop making content.
I get that on my YouTube channel. Please stop spamming my inbox with 5 to 6 videos every single day.
But we're looking to get more and more consistent with when these come out and how often they come out. I'm thinking about maybe recording on Thursdays and putting them out on Fridays. So you guys can have the long, cold, dark weekends to listen to our podcast while you play games. But
because we know that's what you like to do, and keep the feedback coming.
Yeah,
we definitely appreciate any feedback you folks have, and obviously sharing our podcast with anyone, whether it's be a link to the YouTube or on the iTunes store or on the official webpage, which is supergametalk.com.
Supergametalk.com. Yep. Super Game Talk Turbo HD Remix.com was already taken. So I had to go for the shorter version. But
just, share any of those if you like it with other folks who, enjoy gaming podcasts. And, be honest, if there's something you don't like about the podcast, just tell us. Don't be a jerk about it, but say, I don't like this part.
We're looking for all forms of feedback.
Right.
Positive, negative. I didn't like the way you said this word.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way that you used so many fucking cuss words.
Yeah. It's way too much.
Exactly.
You're offending my delicate ears.
Yep. And any feedback's good. And then you can find us at supergametalk.com. You can also subscribe through iTunes. You can rate us on iTunes, give a comment. Where can they find you?
I am on YouTube, is my YouTube channel. I do lots of Let's Plays and Let's Tries. You can find that at youtube.com/Vertigo Tea Party. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. It's at MalachiVT, MalachiVT, or just search Twitter for Vertigo Tea Party.
And you can find me at my blog, which is Capanius, CAPANE.us. And I'm on Twitter at CAPANE_US. And again, supergametalk.com. I think we've said that enough times already.
I think we got it.
All right. You guys have a good week.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.